I'm an alcoholic, and my problem has been Fred all my life. And it's not over. You know, we just have to keep on walking. You know, the big thing is that we have to learn how to face life on life's terms. And that hurts sometimes. It's not always pleasant to walk through the rock crusher, as Jim W. puts it. I want to congratulate this group on 45 years of, of sobriety and helping people and carrying the message in this part of the big state of Texas. I think it's wonderful. And I came here, I sat out there, and I want to say that Ella and Marilyn, I enjoyed your talk very much. I was going to have some comeback to some of it, and I may during the course of what I have to say, because they said some things that I'll probably touch on again here in this hour. I could come up with a good talk, because on the way over here, I got lost. And as I began to listen to the lady at the filling station out here on the highway, at first she called the AA in the newspaper, and no one was there. So you're probably sitting here somewhere. Finally was able to get some direction to the Episcopal Church here, I think, have a meeting there, and I drove by there and there wasn't anybody there. And I started to relate that to a little bit as to what the Big Book is saying to us. How Bill Wilson, in the writing of the Big Book, first, they made a change from the original manuscript to where he finally conceded to the other parties there of the 100 recovered alcoholics that it would be okay to write in there suggested steps, following these steps as suggestions. And originally Bill had said following these directions. And I'm learning something new. I sobered up February the 27th of 78, and I'll talk more about that later. But, I'm learning something new today, and I'll start out with what's going on there. I'm finding out more and more that this program is following directions. It's very easy for all of us, unless we have a sponsor, to do it the easier, softer way. And what the easier, softer way is, in my opinion, is doing it without working the steps. Because it says if you're willing to go to any length, then you're ready to take certain steps. So going to any length means taking the steps. We need directions. I do. I'm sorry. I need directions. And I thought as I came over here, the lady said, well, you go here, you turn here, and then there you are. You'll find it. And I did. And I got lost. I went too far. I made the wrong turn. Got on the wrong street. Didn't find it. Had to go all the way back from square one. And then I still made a wrong turn again. Finally was able to get directions. But I thought about that. I said, I guess it's important then that maybe I need to ask the right people on directions. Because, I'm sure everybody's willing to give directions. But I don't want just any directions now. I'm getting too old for any directions. And what I need is some plain Big Book directions. I want this thing to work for me, because I am selfish now. And, but see, there's a problem. The problem is not just getting the right directions. It's whether I got the guts to follow those directions. So there's a lot involved in what this program's all about. It's not only being able to look at the big book and read them and study those steps and study those chapters that relate to the taking of these steps, and really that's what the big book is about, defining our problem. And, you know, as I sat over there a while ago, I was thinking, well, I said probably starting off, I better talk about what it was like back there. And, you know, really two words came to me. You know, the tragedy of our life. Now, we got a lot of that here, and I'm sure you do. And everybody I've ever talked to has had a lot of tragedy in their life. You know, we've maybe, quite possibly, I need to start my story here. There was a time in my life that I would have to say it was not too bad, because before I became an alcoholic, there was something else that I did that I didn't know why, and I'm still looking at that today as to just how the God of our understanding, you know, works in our life. But see, back then, back in 1958, 59 and 60 and and back there in the late 50s and early 60s, I was ordained as a Baptist preacher. I did not drink, and I had committed myself totally, the best I knew how, to the ministry, and had prepared myself over at Howard Payne College, and then I went to seminary in Fort Worth for a while. And I want to start with that. See, I have a double jeopardy today. You know, Ray Val from Hogansville, Georgia says you can't do it that way. If you've heard his tape, says, well, you can be a minister if you do it the right way. That is, if you become an alcoholic first and then get clean and right, then you can do that. But you can't, you know, be a Baptist preacher first and then everything turn out that way, then you can't do it. Well, Ray Val, if you ever hear this, I'd like to meet you someday. I do appreciate his good words. I'm going to use one of his stories after a while because I promised Rita I would. Rita, where are you? She's back there. Tragedy. Always unexpected. You know, we're broad-sided, aren't we, in life? You know, the unexpected does us, gets us, sometimes throws us down and stomps on us a little bit. Well, anyway, it was back when President John Kennedy was assassinated. I remember those days very clearly because 2 weeks later I was at the bedside of my mother, who was ill in the hospital at that time, and she was 65 years old and had raised 9 kids, of which I was one. And I was able to kiss her and hold her hand for a minute and whisper in her ear before she expired. And so we had a funeral, and we laid Mother to rest, and that's the way life goes. We lose our parents. My dad was still living. He was 72 at that time, a retired engineer for the Missouri, Kansas, Texas Railroad. He loved Mother, though he was an alcoholic and dealt her a lot of misery. And two, I'm from kind of a dysfunctional family also. A lot of alcoholism in my family, in my brothers and sisters. But anyway, Dad, out of grief for Mother, had a heart attack 2 weeks later after her death, and we had another funeral. And so we were sorrowful, the family, in that time. At this time, I wasn't drinking, by the way. I was pastoring a little church up in Bonham, Texas, and was going to seminary part-time in Fort Worth. The church gave me and the family leave for during the Christmas holidays of '63, about 2 or 3 days after Dad's funeral. 2 weeks had gone by, and so we journeyed to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and visited my wife at that time. Her name is Judy, and we had 3 children. Oldest of my children, her name is Virginia. Second child, his name is Michael. Third child, another son, his name is Doug. And Doug was around 2 years old. Jenny, my daughter, was around 7 when we took the journey to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We spent the Christmas holidays there. I took some of that time to study for an exam at the seminary, and little did I know that things were brewing that I was not aware of. And what was brewing, and I do not want to elaborate too much on any of this, only to let you know a few things that happened. And all I want to share with you is that some things do happen that are of tragedy nature. We got ready to come home, or I did, and knew that we had to come back to Texas. Going to my wife, New Year's Eve of '63, she said to me that she had made a decision that she was not going to return with me to pursue the life that I was living in the ministry. And I asked her plainly if she loved me, and she said no, that she had been planning this for some time. And so it was to be that she was going to stay in Cedar Rapids along with the children, and I was to return alone to the little church in Bonham, just north of Bonham, a little rural church. We had about 250 membership there. And so it was that I came back. And I want you to know that I was broken. I couldn't go to Mom and Daddy and cry on their shoulder because they were now deceased. And so it was that I mourned greatly for the family and had an idea that she would change her mind. Judy would change her mind, and they'd come home and everything would be okay. And that was not to be. It just was not to be. And so it was that I walked through the house and observed the children's room where all the toys were. And I observed our bedroom, where the lingerie was, the pretty little things that we shared. But it's very lonesome. Very lonesome. You get used to the family and then see them go, it's very lonesome. Many of us here today, not only me but you, have experienced all of these things. And this is part of how we have to face life on life's terms. But you see, even though I was a minister, I was only 28 years old at that time. And I will admit to you today that I did not know at that time how to face life on life's terms. That this man you're looking at today wept and cried, and my life began to unravel a little bit over that. It began to crumble up a little bit over that. I did have a brother 15 miles away, and I chose to go see him, which I did. Lived over in Henderson. Bill Holt is his name. He's not an alcoholic. He's one of the children that did not do it. Talk about that later. But anyway, I was visiting him on a Saturday night from the little church in Parsonage, and while I was there, the phone rang, and one of the deacons got on the phone, and it was for me, and said, "Brother Holt, I hate to tell you this, but your parsonage has just burned down." And so it was that I was already in a state of shock over, Mother and Dad and the children and the dear wife going. And this was only about 3-4 weeks after the passing of Mother that the parsonage had burned down. I did not have, it was my fault. You know, we can say, hey, you Baptist preachers don't even take care of your obligations. And you know, that's another jeopardizing factor of my life. I had failed to renew the insurance on our belongings. And so all of that was a total loss. I had a garden, and I had put up, me and the wife had put up about 150 quarts of good old green beans. And you know, I don't think that we ever ate a quart of those. Well, maybe 2 or 3, but the next morning being Sunday, I had to go over to the little church and do the thing. And I did, and I walked over there to the parsonage. It's about 2 blocks away, and I drove by there first, and you know, there what used to be the very wonderful place of Brother Fred Hope and his wonderful little family is now ashes. And all that remains is not even the foundation. The cinders burned to the ground, and that's all that was left. And I remember walking through that, and I think I was in a state of shock. I do not recollect that I had any feelings over that, only to know that it was gone. I went over to the church, and I went over and did the service. And after the service, the deacons approached me and says, Fred, we'd like to talk to you. Brother Hope would like to talk to you, and they did. They had already congregated in my little office after the church service, and I went in, and these are outstanding citizens, people. See, I had to deal with that when I sobered up, okay? Looking back on that. Things, institutions, people who stood in your way of getting to where you wanted to be. And I wanted to be one of God's best, and here these people are, and I sat down in the middle of them, and they were all dressed in suits, and they had a spokesman, and they looked at me and said, he said, Fred, we think that it's in the best interest of this church that you leave. And so I had to face that. And I want you to know that I understand the book of Job today, that it's very easy for those people who are on the periphery of tragedy to walk up and say, aha, what did you do wrong? And you know, for the life of me, I don't know that anything was wrong at that time with me, other than but that I was 28 years old and I had prayed crazy prayers that God would give me a testimony. He did. I know what you mean when you say, be careful what you pray for. God will just give it to you. And I said, I want to have something to say like Paul did in the Bible. Well, I haven't seen the blinding light, and I haven't done that, but I have experienced life in all of its bitterness for something. We don't know that maybe God's chipping away at us, maybe taking away the rough edges of your life sometimes, maybe to make of us something that we're supposed to be, and it hurts. And I want you to know that later on in life I saw this psychological stress test. And on this piece of paper, it's on a legal size, and it has all of the tragedies or crises in life that will bombard you with all the hurt and pain that a person can stand. And you know, I looked at that, and I said, my God, I qualify for the first 6 or 8 of the most stressful things that a person can go through, pretty much so, is the loss of a loved one, the losing of your job, the losing of your possessions, and the losing of your children, and I have lost it all. And then I looked at the number of days that all that occurred in, and it all happened within 45 days. From the death of my mother to leaving. And I remember driving down that road, and I guess I can describe my feelings a little bit at that time in that I was very lost. I did not know where to go. I did go to see some professors at seminary, and I even visited Dr. Criswell in Dallas there at the First Church. And, you know, I don't have any resentments over those dear people, but at the time I did, because, you know, they didn't have a solution for me. They couldn't fix anything for me. And really what I wanted at that time was for everything to be fixed. And it just wasn't to be fixed. You know, the best words that could come out of their sweet mouth was, "I'll pray for you." And man, I said, I've been praying for me. You know, and I've been going through what I think I need to do, but, you know, prayers, but see, maybe today their prayers have been heard. And I didn't know, I had to go through 20 years of my life, though, to get to here. Because today, that happened. No big deal. We all suffer a tragedy or a loss. And it's okay today. And I know what the promises mean, where it says that we can learn how to accept the past. You know, our experiences will come back to us in such a way that they will become a tool for us to help other people. Isn't that right? That's what I'm doing, you know. I thought my ministry was over. It isn't over. You know, I've been at Freeman House. God gave me the privilege of working there for about 8 years and saw that little program grow from helping 15 to 17 people. When I left, we had a bed space capacity of helping upward to 50 and running many times at 50 people, increasing the staff there from, you know, like 3 or 4 of us worked there when I first went there, and when I left we had 19. So, you know, God used me. Hey, I'm glad. It's okay. And it's okay that I'm not there today, because I really feel in my heart that God has given me something else to do. And let me say this, it's not through the Baptist church that he's doing this. He's doing it through you. You know, I have found a home with you, and you are wonderful. You are God's kids, and I am so grateful for you. And we got some of them over in Waco like you. You know, we are all over the place. Yeah, you know, I'm delighted to get to be here. I'm not a circuit speaker. Don't plan to be. I go down to the detox center and talk to old George. He's the cook down there. He's not real smart, but you know, he's lovable. He's one of God's kids, and I get a delight out of sitting down drinking coffee with him. He doesn't use good English. I don't care. He's got the language of the heart. And I think that's what this program is all about. It's the language of the heart. We have a lot in common. We have lost a lot, but God is not through with us yet. We are going to, in time, if we'll be patient and long-suffering and be willing to walk through the rock crusher every once in a while, we're going to be okay. We can walk through the fire sometimes. We're going to come out, and God is going to use us. He's going to use you. It behooves you to know that you're here in Henderson or wherever. I've talked to several around about that whatever your skill and whatever your talent and in what way God has given you a specialty of insight into something, that we can take that and you can take that and use that for good here in this big, wonderful state of Texas. Hey, I'm in between jobs now. But I'm thinking that I'm going to be your neighbor. They're on the verge, I believe, of hiring me over with the prison systems. God, my Sunday school teacher says, you going to go over there and work with those outlaws? I say, sure. They're God's kids too. They've got a right to hear. You know, so they got caught doing something wrong. So what? You know, and I've had that on my heart. And so I may be moving over there to Palestine here shortly. And I'm kind of anxious to get busy again. I've been off I'm going to tell you after a while what I've been doing for 2 months. I've been getting paid. See, that's nice, isn't it, to have a vacation, you know, and free time and not have to worry about paying your bills. God's taking care of me. I lost everything back then. And I went to my brothers and sisters, and let me pick up the story again for you. I went to my brothers and sisters, and you know, they were well educated and knowledgeable and all of solving problems, because they, in their solving of problems, used alcohol, and they hugged me. And they cried on my shoulder, and they said, Fred, it's okay if you want to drink. It's, you know, you've had a tough go, and it looks like that God ain't, you know, it doesn't need you too much anyway. And I said, yeah, that's right. You know, I think he's probably through with me. You know, here I am, 30 years old now, but yeah, you know. What the heck? And we got a guy in Waco, he says, be careful of those what the hecks. They'll get us in trouble. They will cause us misery when we say that. But I said that, and it did get me into a lot of trouble. For the next 15 years or so, I drank. And I found in alcohol all the things that I find in the big book as far as making me feel special and important again. And I think I drank with complete abandon. I am an alcoholic. I did not know that I was an alcoholic until I drank it. And I found out quickly that I love that stuff. It soothed my spirit, you know. It soothed my emotions. And I got along all right with it for a while. But it really didn't take but over the 6 months from the time I started drinking to the time I began to find the real tragedy. See, there have been tragedies in my life when I'm okay, when I was not drinking. But now I'm going to talk to you about the real tragedy, okay? And that is the dilemmas, the frustrations, the heartache and the pain, the guilt, the remorse, and all those negatives that go along with the bottle and the alcoholic. So I found a life of misery and turmoil. I got married again, and I certainly picked her out of a good group. I didn't do like Jim W. I didn't go to AA to find her. I went to the bar and found her. And she was a beautiful red-headed girl from Louisiana. No, she was from Georgia. And she said, Quada. And she was one of those too, like you said, Cajun, kind of. But she was sweet, wonderful girl. I had nothing against her, but I mistreated her because I was beginning to drink bad, and that's why I married her, is because she would not stand in my way of letting me do what I wanted to do, and that was to forget the past and remain angry because I was angry. These people, you know, life dealt me a bad hand. You know, I was given a bad hand. I was given the losing hand of the whole society. I was given the worst hand, I thought. I felt cheated, robbed. I had a lot of resentment. I didn't know I had any resentment. I didn't know that y'all talked about that when I got here. But I was filled up. I had stuffed so much hurt and pain in my life that I was the walking, talking, breathing mistake of life. We have a man in Waco, he says, talking about character defects, he says, you know, it's not that I have character defects, he says, I'm a defective character. And you know, that's how I felt. When I got here, I felt like that the misery, the mistake of life was certainly who I was. I should not have been born. It just was not right that I should go through all that I had to go through. Well, needless to say, a pity pot was part of that too. And so I drank and cried. I was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, though, and I didn't know until I read the book that that's how it is. You know, all of the people that ever knew me sober says, gosh, Fred, you are such a wonderful person. You couldn't be an alcoholic. Well, I'll let you go on thinking that, but I was very mean. And I listened to the Al-Anon speaker a while ago. Some of that had to do with me. Not with her, but with this pretty little redhead. Had to take her to the hospital. I remember waking up one morning, walking in the kitchen, and there she was, crying. And she had, I don't like to say this, she had a blue spot here on her arm and blue spot down here on her leg. And I said, my God, Ann, what happened? And she said, Fred, you did this last night. And I did not know that. Blackouts were common with me. They were regular with me. I was violent. I couldn't help that as an alcoholic. I hurt people, and I got hurt, see. I met my match a few times. Y'all didn't, but I did, you know. I got the hell beat out of me a few times. We ended up in the hospital in Dallas one time. I had a job, and my boss came to see me, and he says, what happened to you? Well, I was in a car wreck. I wasn't in no car wreck, no car wreck. That old boy just had on some Justin boots, and he kicked me hard, and he hurt me bad. Both eyes closed, and no teeth. All these are mine. Still got my teeth. Thank God for that. I went to jail. I know what it is to lay it out in jail. I was a public inebriate. I was a DWI offender. I ran a car into a bridge, and I didn't know that I had run into a bridge, and I said, well, car stopped. And I got out, and I walked around to the front, and I said, well, golly, no wonder it stopped. You know, it totaled it out, and I had to pay for part of the bridge later on. So there was a lot of comedy as we look back on it, and thank God we can laugh over that today. But you know, at the time, scared, God, you know, I ran back down to the beer joint and looked out the window drinking, and there the police are out there taking my car off to the pound. I was able to get it back without a charge of a DWI at that time. In a year and a half, I had 4 DWIs in Dallas, but for the grace of God, I would have gone to one of these prisons. Didn't have to do that, but I do know what incarceration is. See, I can relate with people in divorce. I don't know what that's all about. I can relate with you in matters of probably death and dying, and I can relate with you. And I marry a few people today. People come and say, will you marry me? I say, yeah. You know, I know you. But I screen them first, and if some of those drunks are nicking a little bit or smoking a little grass, I won't do it. They got to be working a program before I'll do it. Anyway, I did not get to raise my children. They call another man daddy. In Chicago, my ex-wife married an airlines pilot with TWA and took care of them well, except that I was jealous. I still had that in my heart that I do not want another man to be in my place. I want to be the man and the father and I want to be that person, but I didn't get to do it. It wasn't in the cards that I should do that. And so I just kept on drinking. I just kept on to oblivion. Self-will run right. I just quit caring. And I kept hating. And the hate began to spread. I've never heard too many people talk about this, but I might have started out hating or having a strong resentment toward these people that messed with me and took away my goal in life, and then that resentment began to spread to y'all and to those out there, to society as a whole. And I don't know what this means, but I hated everybody. I just could not find any good in nothing no more. And I kept drinking. I remember one day waking up. I was in the kitchen of a little apartment I had at that time. And I remember waking up, or coming to. I didn't wake up. I came to, and there I was laying on the floor. And here are all these whiskey bottles. And by the way, I was a bourbon drinker. I wasn't too much for beer. And only to crawl on the floor to the kitchen table, and there was about that much more vodka, and I remember pulling myself up to the table just for the strength to get to that bottle, and then to pour it and hold it and pour it down me, and then to pass out again. And then the knocking on the door, and they broke the door down and got me, and they took me to the VA hospital, and they dried me out. And I lost track of time. I still don't know how many days that was, but I lost my job over it. And it wasn't unusual for me to lose jobs then. I'd get a job with Montgomery Ward and sell carpet, and I'd be so hungover, I'd be stooping over to short somebody, and I'd just fall over on my head. And then the boss began to notice there's something wrong with him. And so they had to let me go. And one of them was a recovering person, and he says, "Fred, if you'd just get in this thing, you'd be okay like me." And I said, "No, you don't appeal to me." Nothing appealed to me then. There was no real excitement to the joy of any good, beautiful, or wonderful thing. I really believed that all the wonderful things had gone, and I was destined never to know the thrill of wonderful again. I didn't know. I ended up in McKinney, Texas, working in a warehouse, making $3.25 an hour, sweeping floors. They built cranes there. General manufacturing, I believe. And then that really hurt my pride. Hell, I'm too smart to be sweeping floors. I've got too many skills to be doing this. $3.25 an hour. I was living with my sister. See, I had already walked the streets, and I'd already leaned on enough people to where everybody I'd lean on for a while, they'd shove me back, and then I'd have to go somewhere else, and my enabling systems began to fail until my sister let me come live with her, and she let me drink. And so all the money that I made there at $3.25 an hour, staying at home at her house and drinking to oblivion every night, being hung over daily and in blackouts many times. And I do not remember too much about those days until one day I shoved her and she fell on the floor of the house. And after that, I remember those words that she said to me. She says, "Fred, I love you, but you can't stay here anymore." And so it was that my enabling systems crumbled, and something had to give. And I did not want to get sober, had no plans to, but I knew that I was getting in a bad shape. And my brother, who is a disabled veteran, came over the night before this all happened, and we got drunk together, and I fought him. And he's disabled, and I'm not. And I want you to know that there's some things in my drunk-a-log that I'm ashamed of, but I'm okay today. But I needed to let you know that. Today, I'll tell you about this drunk brother after a while. I had to take him home one day, and I drove the truck, and Ann was following me in the car, and he was driving 80 and down a dirt road, and so I turned the keys off so that I didn't want to be in a wreck. We were both drunk, but I guess he was more brave than me. I turned the keys off, and the car came to a stop, and we stepped outside the car, and I hit him and knocked him down into the bar ditch. And I ran and got in the car with my wife, and we followed him home. And as we drove up in front of his house, he was on the front porch with a .38, and he was cursing me bad. And he began to fire the .38, and we sped off down the road, and nobody was hurt. This same brother said, "Fred, why don't you get some help?" He was still drinking. He didn't need help, but I did. He said, "They all thought I was an alcoholic." I didn't know that. Didn't want to believe that. I thought this was normal. When I sobered up, I thought everybody was like me. And I was only to find out that maybe 13 to 15% are like me, or alcoholic. I didn't know that. But anyway, I finally conceded that, there's no place else to go. The sister tells me that I have to go, that she's not going to put up with me anymore, and so where am I going to go? And there's nobody else to turn to, and I'm not a street person. I don't know how. I'm not one of those people. I didn't sleep under any bridges. I'm sorry. I just didn't do that. My bottom was not there, but my bottom was enough. God knew something that I didn't know. When I got on that Greyhound bus in McKinney and went to Waco, I didn't know what was coming. All I was thinking was that, this will give me a chance to get out of it for a while. So I did. And a little to my surprise, good things began to happen gradually, slowly. Then I started going to AA meetings. They had transportation into town in Waco, and stayed there in the hospital 63 days. And then after I got out, I went and lived at the Freeman House for 4 months. It's supposed to just be 3 months, Ken. But it came time for me to go, and they said, "Fred, we're in another month." And I did. And then I found out that when they screened me for the hospital, the staff that did that, the 6 people, 5 of them said, "He's too crazy to come into here." Hurts my feelings to let you know that. They said, "He's too crazy to go into treatment. He needs to be on a psychiatric ward." There was one man, his name is Homer Schultze, and he's still working at the VA hospital. But he begged the other staff people to give me a chance. And today I'm so grateful that Homer argued for me, because I'm alive today. And I have found a new freedom and a new happiness. And I have found life to be wonderful and greater today than I ever had before in my life. So I got sober. A year or two later, hadn't seen my children in over 12 years. Someone told them that their daddy was sober. I did not know where they were, what they were doing. Even though I paid child support for a long time, never did get to see them. They lived way up in Chicago, and I lived way down in Texas, and I never did make a lot of money in my life. But anyway, they came to see me one at a time. My daughter came to see me, Jenny. She's an anesthetist. She married a medical doctor here a few months ago, and they have a wonderful life now. But she came to see me, and she said in my apartment, I had about a year or two sobriety when they came to see me. See, I had already surrendered when I was in treatment and in Freeman House. I had finally succumbed to know that I can't do nothing about nothing. That's surrender. When you can't go on and you can't go back. Bottom. Surrender is taking off the battle armor and turning it in. Conceding to your innermost self, too, that you don't have all answers. Matter of fact, you don't have none. I didn't. Still don't know how to get to an AA meeting. I still need directions. Now, I'll tell you, my sponsor is mean. He told me recently, he says, Fred, you just don't work a good program. I wanted to hit him. I'm a little bit like some of these other speakers that every time I look at him, he looks at me as if to say, hell, you're lucky to be sober. You know, and he could very well verbalize that. And, you know, it makes me feel so awful sometimes. But then we hug. And you know what I've learned? I've discovered some things now. I can hug you. I want to tell you something else, though. I felt unloved for many years, thinking it was all over. But then my children came, and Jenny sat on the couch, and tears running down her cheek said to me, Daddy, I love you, and I never did know that a person could have as many friends as what you got. God, I felt good about that. Here, something is changing. Someone dear to me is saying to me, Daddy, I love you. I felt that those words I would never hear again. And now that I'm sober, I am hearing heavenly words. Great. But let me tell you, when my son came to see me, Mickey, he's flying helicopters down here in Louisiana, offshore, today. He's a pilot. But he came to see me when he was in basic training, when he was in the Army. And he and I laughed and had a good time together. And then it came time for him to go back to the fort over here in Louisiana. And I walked him out to the car. And I opened the car door for him. And he didn't get in. He just turned around and put his two arms and hands up on my shoulders. And he looked me straight in the eyes. And see, the last time I saw him, he was down here. He was maybe 9 or 10 years old. And now he's a big man in the Army. He's in his 20s, 12 years later. So he is just as big as tall as I am. Better looking than I am. But he looked me in the eye, and these are the words he said. Daddy, I want you to know something, that I'm glad that your blood is in my veins. And this old man had to turn around because it really choked me up. Those little guys that I call most dear to me now hug me. And you know, my big sons kiss me, and I kiss them. And we have a love affair today. because God has turned the tables back for me. That's what this program does. We say, what's the payoff? Well, let me tell you about what's in it for you. If we just keep trudging this road to happy destiny, God is going to be with us, and He is going to do for us great and wonderful things if we will just do that. He has for me. And so I have today children that call me on the phone and they say, Daddy, I want you to know that I love you. And so I'm getting kind of okay if I can just learn how to follow directions better. And that's what I'm doing today. What has really captured my attention in this AA program is what Bill says, is that when we finally turn it over and know that He is the boss and I'm His kid, He is the boss every day, and that He's our director. And I stopped and looked at that word and I said, Fred, are you letting God be your director? I said, well, kind of casually, enough. Now, Fred, why don't we get into this big book more and learn how to really practice these principles of God? And then I've been studying this book again, and I'm going to read it to you. It's at the middle of page 68. It said, we reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper even though we had no resentment in connection with our fears. We asked ourselves why we had them. And wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? You know, at the end of each resentment, there's fear. That's what the big book says. Fear is the result of all of our resentment, things that have stood in our way of getting where we felt like we should be. Fear out of loss of loved ones, money, self-respect, and all. The fear of being left out. But we don't have to suffer that fear. It says here then that fear is the result of self-reliance. And if I rely on myself always, the end is not going to be good. Because it says self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Then this is what I want to read to you. Perhaps there is a better way. Instead of self-reliance, we think there's a better way. For we are now on a different basis. The basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. It gets tougher, people. Listen. We are in the world to play the role He assigns. Capital He assigns to me. We are in the world because we are to fulfill the role that He assigned to me, to you. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us do and humbly rely upon Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. And then this is it. I've got it read out here. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator God. We don't have to apologize for nothing concerning our Creator God. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God.
Courageous men trust their God. We never apologize for God. We don't have to apologize for our God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. And I close with that. Not to close. I'm not through here. Not through. The best part is getting ready. I'm dealing in some new discoveries today. I'm realizing more and more that when I came into this program, I did not have all the answers, even though I had a good education. Education has nothing to do with this thing called life. We are not going to find it necessarily in any philosophy or theology or nothing. It is going to be through an alcoholic sharing his experience, strength, and hope with another alcoholic. That's what works. And there's something mysterious and magical and phenomenal about the fellowship of AA, because there is love here. There is something more powerful, though, than anything in the working of the steps, for in them we can find the power to live. And my dilemma has been powerlessness, as the big book describes. The dilemma, the frustrations of my life has been that I don't have what it takes to make life work right. And now life can work right if I let him be the director of my life. The big book says that letting God be our director and father and the boss is the keystone of the archway. And the keystone is the stone that's fixed here in the middle that holds up the archway. So letting God be God and knowing who you are is the archway under which we pass to freedom. Dr. Bob had an inscription on his desk, and I think it describes in total what this program will do if we work the steps and we keep coming back. The inscription goes like this, quote, "Humility is perpetual quietness of heart. It is to have no trouble. It is never to be fretted or vexed, irritable or sore. It is to wonder at nothing that is done to me, and to feel nothing against me. It is to be at rest when nobody praises me, and when I am blamed or cursed. It is to find a blessed home within myself, where I can go in and close the door and kneel to my Father in secret and be at peace, as in a deep sea of calmness, when all the world about me is seemingly troubled." Those words are stout. Maybe this program can get rid of the old Fred Holt. And maybe you won't know me anymore because he will be gone. And maybe you will see in me something God has done and you have done. And maybe I will be that person that God has intended for me to be if I can but work these steps and trust God, clean house, and work with others. I'm going to close with an Indian prayer. We don't have to bow our heads, but it too describes what this is all about. It goes like this, quote, "O great Spirit, I hear your voice in the wind that blows life into all the earth. Hear me for I am small and I am weak. I need your strength and your wisdom that you have hidden under every leaf and stone. Let me always walk with beauty, and my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make me wise, so that I will understand what you have told my people. Make my hands always respect the things you have made, and my ears sharp, so that I will hear what you have told my people. O Great Spirit, I seek your strength and your wisdom, not to be greater than my fellow man, but that I might fight my greatest enemy, myself. And when this life is ending, as the shadows leave the sunrise, may my spirit stand straight before you without shame. Thank you.